It has been, I imagine, a very dark couple of days for Catholics. And this video is for Catholics because I'm grieving with you. Even though I'm Jewish, I went to 3 years of Catholic high school where I had to take theology classes. I actually knew all my friends in high school were Catholic, and I actually learned about the Catholic religion way more than I ever learned about the Jewish religion. And I went to Wednesday Mass every week. And so I can picture very clearly, along with you, what it would be like to be sitting there or to have my children sitting there in chapel when a school shooter came in, killed 2 children, wounded 18 more, tried to kill many more, and traumatized an entire community for the rest of their lives. And maybe like me, you agree that the mass slaughter of children is the greatest evil in this world. And speaking of that kind of evil, I hope that your faith communities are talking about and organizing around the fact that in the birthplace of your Savior, where tens of thousands of children have been slaughtered over the last 2 years, the Catholic and Greek Orthodox churches in Gaza have refused an Israeli order to evacuate their churches because that would mean leaving behind hundreds of people who are sheltering within them and are unable to flee, knowing full well that to remain in Gaza City as the Israeli army advances is tantamount to a death sentence. Something that the Jewish Policy Center thought it would be cool to joke about on Twitter. I hope that your parishes, that all Christian faith communities are talking about the connections, the very important connections between these two horrible acts of violence against children. Because we know full well how to stop both of these kinds of things from happening. The United States is the only country in the world where these types of school shootings keep happening because the United States is the only country in the world where it is so easy for anyone to get a gun. Gun control is the answer, but we cannot get gun control done in this country because the weapons manufacturing industry owns our government. Because it's too profitable. They're making too much money off of selling guns to do anything to limit anyone's ability to get a gun, even a gun of war. There are just clearly certain people who have a thing in their brain where if they have the ability to get a gun and kill a bunch of people randomly, or maybe children randomly, they are going to do it. Turns out the same thing is true for countries. There are certain countries where if you just give them an unending supply of the most advanced military equipment on the face of the earth, they can't stop themselves from mass murdering the people they stole that land from. We know exactly how to stop the genocide in Gaza immediately. All the US president has to do is say, no more aid to Israel, no more sending billions of our taxpayer dollars worth of weapons to Israel. Y'all are cut off. That's it. Genocide over. In fact, a few months after that, probably Israel over, which is a prospect that as a Jew, again, I wholeheartedly welcome. When I say that, I'm not calling for violence against Israelis. I'm saying end this country that is a mass shooter on the global scale. It needs to be stopped. It needs to have its weapons cut off. But the US won't cut off Israel because, again, there are certain people who are making way too much money off of selling and dropping these bombs on Palestinian kids. There is so much money to be made off the land and the oil under the land in Palestine, and simply put, on the price tag of selling Israel endless amounts of bombs to drop on the people living on the land in Palestine. And just like with the gun lobby, those weapons manufacturers own our government, and they own the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and so politicians aren't doing anything to stop this. So it's up to us, my community and your community. If you didn't realize it before this week, you should realize now that you are a part of this. And as I learned at Catholic school, there's plenty of historical precedent that Catholic faith groups can oppose the weapons manufacturing industry. Because since the 1980s, nuns in the Plowshares movement have engaged in radical acts of civil disobedience, including destroying nuclear warhead tips, chaining themselves to weapons manufacturing complexes, being arrested, being convicted of sabotage, going to prison in order to end nuclear proliferation. Y'all, again, speaking as a Jew whose ancestral faith community has been morally abysmal by and large for the last 2 years, kind of seems like the Catholic community writ large is lacking some of that radical energy of the Plowshare Sisters when it comes to what's happening to your own church brethren in Gaza. And if you were any other kind of Christian, I would tell you, if you go to Mass this Sunday and your priest isn't making connections between the impending martyrdom of your Catholic clergy in Gaza and what happened at Annunciation Catholic School and the money and the money lenders that are making money off of these weapons and why this mass violence continues. If you were any other type of Christian, I would tell you, find another church. We can't do that if you're Catholic, can you? So I think that like I have been having to do with my community for the last 2 years, y'all have to talk within your own community. You have to bring it up and challenge your priest and say, why aren't we talking about what's happening in Gaza? And if you think you're not brave enough to do that and to talk to the people in your community, I want to remind you about a little activity that we did at Catholic school in the 90s, where they took us all into a gym and they made a little multiple choice quiz you could answer with your feet. And they gave us a series of moral dilemmas and you had to go stand on a little dot that showed what you would do in that moral dilemma. And it started out kind of chill. It was like, would you steal? Everybody's on the no spot. Would you steal if you had to steal to feed your family? People are starting to break up in different directions. And it escalated and it escalated until it got to the question, would you die for your faith? Gun to your head, someone says, are you a Catholic? If you say yes, I'm going to shoot you. Would you die for your faith? And so many of you girls, because I went to an all-girls Catholic school, this was like a breaking point. By this point, everyone was in tears, sobbing. What are we going to do? I'm the lone atheist Jew. I very easily was standing on the no, I would not die for my faith. Like, trying not to laugh at all of y'all having mental breakdowns over this question. But it was a very serious question, and I should have taken it more seriously and pondered, would I have died for my principles? Some girls left the room sobbing, couldn't answer, but almost all of you went and stood on the little spot that meant I would die for my faith. Tears, snot streaming down your faces. You decided in that moment you could find that kind of courage in you. Or maybe you were just worried about like peer pressure and looking bad if you didn't stand on that spot. I can't know, but assuming best intentions, you said you had that kind of courage. No one is asking you here to die for your faith as these church leaders in Gaza have decided. But can you find the bravery to speak out against the mass slaughter of children, to devote your life to being Christ-like, to flipping the tables of moneylenders, to speaking truth to power, to pounding swords into plowshares? Just speak up. Speak up in your churches, in your families. Make the connections between the violence here and the violence in Gaza and talk about the people making money off of it. Because I'm pretty sure if Jesus was here today and he knew what a bomb was, he would be flipping a lot of tables about the number of banks and like high finance shit going on making money off the mass slaughter of children. And how those people are now in charge of the whole freaking world. And it's up to common people like you and me to do something about it. And that starts with speaking up within our own communities. Channel that sobbing teen who decided they would die for their faith and speak out. Once again this week, I'm giving away a free audiobook code and a signed special edition hardcover of Genocide Bad to one person who donates. Sana's school in Gaza, she's fundraising right now just to be able to provide flour and sugar to her students. To win the audiobook and personalized hardcover, just donate at least $5 at the first fundraising link in my bio and send screenshot of your receipt to t4gaza@gmail.com. That's a letter T, the number 4, gaza@gmail.com.